Welcome to the Smart Thinking Podcast. This is my dad, Ted.
Welcome to the Smart Thinking Podcast. I'm your host, Ted Knightsky. On this episode, I want to share with you a process that will allow you to operate with more predictability in the workplace, classroom, office, even life. A practice that many people fear, and that is forecasting upfront the changes that are likely to occur for you as a leader or a learner. I have found over the course of my career in life that if we tell people in advance what's going to happen, well, they have time to adjust socially, emotionally, and build their skill sets so they can be successful. I find that people in charge of change operate in an internal panic mode because they fear the reactions of the people they live with, teach, or serve. I also find that people who do lead change or iterations or evolutions find themselves stuck on the first response. In other words, when they do share out the change, the first person to respond is, well, that's the one who they usually stick with. You know what I mean? When you're discussing doing something different, there's always this self-appointed first responder, the person who can't filter their emotional response from reason and then blurts out something that just came to their mind. When we lead change or have to shift the direction of the journey, we cannot prepare for the unknown responses of a few. We have to saddle up for a journey and get all of the information without bias or worry. And that's why I wanted to take the approach of meteorologists. Now, depending on what part of the world we live in, meteorologists can be insanely accurate, like Southern California, where they're near 99% accurate in their forecasts because it's always the same thing. It's again going to be blue skies, 81 degrees and a light breeze. Or if you live where I live in the upper Midwest of the United States, the meteorologists are around 80% accurate because they've trained us to live with it might, it could, it's likely. It's that type of forecast. There's just too many conditions that can change all of the time, and, well, we have to change with them. And that's because things can change on our gigantic planet, and then people adjust. However, there's one thing that everyone, everywhere likes to discuss, and that's the weather. And the same stands true in classrooms, boardrooms, and offices when it comes to change. Change around here, change they're doing to us. And then we discuss what was correct and incorrect with the ways things rolled out. Just like the weather. They said we were supposed to get rain all afternoon, it only rained for half an hour. Well, the Earth's a big thing, and change is even bigger. The problem is that we always are willing to forgive the meteorologists, but we're not always willing to forgive the people running change or initiatives if things are not exactly the way they had forecasted them. So we need to change our behavior. And in the end, what we need to do in all of our organizations is find a way to share the equal amount of grace with those that stand alongside us as we give to the meteorologists who often are just a little wrong in their forecast. But for some reason, in organizations and classrooms, you can never be wrong. You have to be correct. There is no way that we could ever do something different than what was said we would do. Well, the key word is when other people are wrong in their forecast, we have to focus on the word forecast because the word actually means to estimate or predict. And no one makes more mistakes than meteorologists, literally. But man, do we ever take leaders literally? And are we quick to cast blame when those same leaders are not doing or we are not getting what was predicted or what they estimated at any level? And the first thing we always are leaders. And a leader is anyone who has influence over another person, cognizant every day that everything we are doing is being watched and learned by someone else, cognizant of the simple fact that our very actions alone are impacting the entire world around us. We are always just a raindrop in the river. We can change the direction of a lot of things around us. The second thing is we are all followers, people who have to adhere to the CARE principle. We have to collaborate with other people. We have to hold ourselves accountable. We have to be resilient, and we have to be engaged by intention. We have to choose to be engaged, which means that we are looking to solve problems and not cast blame. And we do this by leading with empathy, wondering what would it be like to be that person in front of us, especially if there's somebody in situational authority, like they're the ones leading the change and it's not going well. Well, instead of piling on, what we would do is we would ask ourselves, what would I need if I were them in this moment? And today we're going to focus on some of those processes that the people who are on the receiving end of change might need and the way we can change our behaviors. And we do that because we're reflective. Always asking ourselves, what went well today and what would I change for tomorrow? And we do that because every single day we buffalo into the storms that we are facing to get through them faster. and get to those starry nights or sunshiny days. Okay, so the problem we face in every organization and system is that people take on a few roles in change and day-to-day life. And that problem is that there is always a person who's leading and in charge of facilitating messaging, has high ownership in what is going on, and many times this person carries an internal burden as well as natural worries about their relationships with others, the expectations they have for themselves and others, the outcomes, the reactions of anything that they have to leave. And as a result, there's a burden there. And that burden is sometimes heavy. And as a result of it being too heavy, well, then there are multiple stakeholders that they have to deal with, and they have all of their own behaviors. And I have 3 ways of describing them, and I'm going to use some pop culture characters to help you understand their mindsets. You see, what happens is in change, people adopt one of 3 different types of behaviors. And you could be any one of these at any moment, depending on where you're at, but it's just really a matter of getting yourself through it. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, the first one I always think about is Marlin, who's Nemo's dad. Oh, man. In the early 2000s, watching Nemo every day with my son Charlie, I learned a lot from that show. I'm sorry, that cartoon, that movie, whatever it was. Anyways, Nemo's dad's name was Marlin, and he was a mature clownfish who was perpetually worried and vocalized his concerns nonstop to everybody and everyone. And he led with statements that were always like, "Why is this happening? I can't believe this." And that's how the people in organizations who deal with change sometimes can be. They can be Nemo's dad, always leading with statements like, "Why is this happening?" Then there is the Lorax of your teams, classrooms, and cultures. They feel for some reason that they have been self-elected to speak for everyone, and they lead with statements that always begin with "we" and somehow end with "they." Now, the third one is Roadrunners. Meep, meep. They just keep moving and adjusting with whatever threats occur. They get joy in the journey and the speed and the surviving the attacks all around them. They lead with statements that are always driven with possibility, and they iterate on the fly, saying things like, "Could we? What if we also? Can we also try this?" Now, these 3 behaviors can be summed up like this. The panic response, Nemo's dad. The defensive deflective response, the Lorax's. Now pause. I love the Lorax, by the way, just not when people weaponize the advocacy to maintain status quo and they get defensive and deflective. Not the fun Lorax. And finally, adjust and learn response, the Roadrunner response. Meep, meep. Let's just keep going. So, thinking like and leading like a meteorologist, well, what's that look like? Well, it's putting people in a position to predict what's coming so that they can individually foresee how to adjust their own behaviors, opting in or out of whatever the situation is. But I've gotten too far. Of course, I have to stop here and tell you a quick story. When we think of our opportunity to opt in or out because we can predict what is coming, I actually have a meteorologist story for you, and it got me in a little trouble once. The trouble was this. The meteorologist ended up calling me and yelling at me for saying some things on TV. But that's still to come. Years ago, when I was a superintendent of schools, one of my responsibilities was to determine if we could have school if there was extreme weather in the winter. You know, snow days. Superintendents in the Midwest and Upper East Coast all know the absolute lack of fun it is when it comes to deciding the conditions to determine if we're going to have school the next day. We have several forces at play and pressuring us. The media treating every snowstorm like it'll be our last. Even more recently naming snowstorms and personifying their devastating impact on the world that we live in with the impending 1 inch of snow that's going to disrupt everything. The second thing is parents who need to adjust for childcare if we close and determine what they're going to do with their children if they have to be with them all day long at home. The third consideration, which is really the most important, is for safety. Staff safety, student safety, and everything else that goes along when you open up a school in the morning and then shut it down, like food preparation, transportation on buses, and if we'll have to expand the school year at the end of the year if we cancel too many days in a row. The fourth is every child in the district. They are one of the biggest forces at play here because they have a love for a random day off of school. Sleeping with spoons under their pillows, their pajamas inside out, putting ice cubes in the toilet, whatever they were doing. Anyways, so on one particular January day, I'd come into the office and found myself besieged with notes from parents, principals, staff, and students. The meteorologists were predicting a major snowfall and the end of the world and discussing all of the ways this would be incredibly dangerous tomorrow, encouraging people to get their groceries and batteries and life-saving needs because this was going to be so bad. Please hear all of this with extreme levels of sarcasm. Then Then my phone starts beeping as my neighboring school district colleagues are calling me and contacting me and asking if we're going to call the day off soon. Now, we were the largest school district in the region, and that had a lot of influence on others, and it also had additional pressures. However, I was really calm and patient and was leaning towards not calling school off the day before. You see, I had a little insight that I had learned at a course offered by the National Weather Services. They told us that the best thing to do with media-excited forecasts was to look at and watch what the weather was doing in other places before it got to you. You want to know what is going to happen in 8 hours? Well, they told us look back at what happened 8 hours ago. Certain storms could and did change. And well, in this particular storm, this was on the border of being a true blizzard and nothing major at all. So I looked backwards to predict forwards. At the time, my brother Tom was the president of a high school in Omaha, Nebraska. And I called him and said, "Hey, how bad is that storm by you that they're talking about?" He started to laugh. He said, "Well, we canceled school yesterday and I'm sitting in my office looking at rain. It's like 40 degrees here. It's not even freezing. Everyone's upset that the kids are home and it looks like the sun is about to come out." I started to laugh and we continued our conversation. But what did he do? He forecasted for me a different experience that had actually happened versus what was predicted to happen. I hung up, turned on the news, and said to my team, "I'm not calling a snow day until tomorrow." Well, the pressure was on now because as the day ended, schools all around the state of Wisconsin were being flashed across the television screen because they were calling off the school day for tomorrow and learning and everything else. And I had a choice. At that point, I could opt into the pressure and forecast, or I could opt out at this time. And I chose to opt out. I drove home, went to bed. My kids were going to be home that day because their school district closed. My wife was going to be home that day because her school district closed. And I went to bed and set the alarm for 4 a.m. Everyone was like, "Dad, why are you going to bed early? We don't have school tomorrow." And I got to be honest. I said, I'm going to bed because I haven't called it yet. Their eyes widened. "Are you serious? Look at the news. We're going to have the biggest snowstorm ever tomorrow." Whew. I got to be really, really honest with all of you. I was being besieged with angry emails from parents, teachers, school board members, my principals, and just about everyone was telling me, "You better call this off right now." And I almost did before I went to bed because of the pressure and wanting to just quit on this and just get it over with and be done with it. But I said to myself, something just isn't right here. The weather was not changing, and it wasn't doing what it was supposed to do as it was approaching from Iowa and southern Minnesota. It wasn't getting colder outside, but it was actually getting warmer. And the meteorologists were still predicting a huge snowstorm. Once this hits Lake Michigan, it's going to drop and drown us out with a ton of snow. At 10 p.m., the largest school district in our state announced they would be closed for the next day. Ugh. I went to bed and the alarm popped immediately. Have you ever had a night of sleep like that where you're stressed out, you close your eyes, and the next thing you know, you got to get up? Well, I awoke to drizzling rain and 45 degrees. It was like a London, England type of winter outside. I smiled and went back to sleep as my weather app showed that the temperatures were going to hold in the mid-40s. Now, before I move forward and share what happens, I have to tell you that I only leaned into this and learned to look back before moving forward because one time our school district actually did call a snow day the day before and no one else did. And the next day, not only was there no snow, it was 50 degrees and sunny. So we didn't always bat 1,000. Anyway, I woke up an hour later to go for my morning run, and as I'm running, my phone is blowing up with phone calls from the media. Request after request for interviews and wondering how I knew not to close school when everyone else was closed and now regretting it because they couldn't turn it back. I mean, in all seriousness, all I did was opt out of the panic and delay the decision based upon other bits of information, not fold to the pressure, and make sure to maintain patience through this change and through the processes as they rolled out. Plus, I got some insight from someone else who had been through it. Lucky is what I was. Lucky through process, I used to think. Anyway, I got to my office at my normal 7 o'clock time. Buses were driving by and everyone was going to school. But media from all major networks had vans parked out front of our district office asking for an interview. Finally, after a few hours, I went outside, which, by the way, it was now 45 degrees and sunny, and they all jammed a microphone into my face. What did you know? How did you know? What insights did you have? How were you able to predict this better than our own meteorologists? I stood there being asked the same question in 20 different ways by these different reporters, like I had experienced all of this on my own, and I was a master of understanding the weather. And really, at the end of the day, it felt just like when I was a teacher or a principal in my staff room or a teacher in my classroom or even as a coach, just being asked the same questions over and over and over in different ways until finally, after too long and being frustrated by the repetitiveness of the questions, I just stood there like, oh, come on now. I'm done. We've answered all of these questions before. And then I was asked, what do you know that the weather people don't? I said, listen, meteorologists know it's not an exact science. They're more like wizards when it comes to trying to do this, to try to magically predict what's going on and tell us what to expect. And they get everybody all roiled up. I just opted out of the hype and waited. I smiled and walked away. When I got back to my office, I started working again, and about a half an hour later, I get a phone call from a very angry chief meteorologist who said, "Who are you to call me a wizard and say that you opted out of our hype?" And I said, "I'm the superintendent of schools. I'm responsible for a lot of people, and you guys make every weather event seem like the end of the world. Have a good day." People believe what they want to believe. They listen through different filters. What is this change going to force me to do? What is this idea going to make me have to fight for? What is this change going to do to help me grow or hurt my future? What is my role, and how do I get to, a spot of success? Change is like weather. It has so many unpredictable components, and yet everyone acts as if we can forecast all the consequences of the change perfectly. We can't. Nobody can. We acted like it has to be someone's fault if it didn't go the way we planned in the change, and we always look to make someone a villain or a hero if it works or doesn't work. And on the day I called a go-to-school day instead of a snow day, I was both. I didn't call school, and some were very happy, and others were very frustrated. So what do we do? What do we do when we get to positions like this? Well, last year on episode 342, I shared the probability tool, and this tool asks you to do a few things and answer a lot of things. I'm bringing it to you today again because I deal with people all the time in my own organization and supporting other organizations who are constantly frustrated with the need or forced changes that we have to make. And yet we still always step into one of those three roles. There are so many opportunities for us to support mindset and allow people to see what is coming so that they can prepare, that we need to do a better job of taking advantage of that, especially at the different levels of leadership. While the senior leaders may be able to forecast out, hey, here's what we're doing, why we're doing it, and where we're going. Sometimes they do that with enthusiasm. Sometimes they do it with a lack of energy. But every time they do it, there are people who are in the audience who have a way to respond. But there are many others who have to lead within. And the earlier we forecast for people, the better off we'll be. That means that we will be fast. We will allow people to cycle through all of their emotions and seek tactics to help them learn, grow, and go. So the probability tool is something that I can email you, and you'll find on our blog post this coming Thursday at cisa6.org. But what it is it's a T-chart. On one side it says what to expect, and on the other side it says how to prepare. Now, what to expect? What will the new change be next year? What will be changed or iterated? What are we eliminating? Explanations should be as many higher order changes as possible for everyone and or lower order changes that will upset the culture. Things like shifts in scheduling, insurance, benefits, new programs, different ways in which we're going to do things, schedules, curriculum, training needs, shifts in funding, or simply new policies. But we should be telling people as early as possible, here's what to expect. Now, on the right side is a blank spot, and it's asking the people to determine how to prepare. Now, let's go back to our beautiful buffalo metaphor. A buffalo sees the storm coming. What does it do to prepare? It faces it. Then, when lightning strikes the earth and it energizes the buffalo begins to move, using that energy to take it into the storm. And once the rain hits, it charges. Well, how do you prepare if you know it's coming? Well, you do certain things. You look for professional development opportunities, watching videos, podcasts, reading books, seeing journals, visiting other schools, doing anything that you can do to grow yourself so that you have the skills needed in order to foresee what's going to happen. Like I did with my brother. I just called him. What's the weather in Omaha? It's raining. It's not even that cold outside. Okay, that's probably going to be us in 8 hours. I'm just going to wait on my decision. If you position people to understand what to expect and then how to prepare, well, the probability of success is much higher because they can forecast what they need to do in order to get through the storm. If you go outside and you know it's going to rain and you bring a coat and an umbrella and you are prepared, you are never disappointed if it doesn't rain. You are only disappointed if you didn't get the chance to prepare. It is the responsibility and the obligation of all of us to help each other see what to expect so that we can prepare. And I'd rather have a lot of people that I work around be over-prepared and then be underwhelmed. That's always our goal. Okay, are there other things we can do, Ted? Yeah. Now, friends, you know if I speak in third person, it's going to be really important what comes up. Well, after we forecast for what it could be and how to prepare, we need to step into that space and do a few things. And here's what best practices say for each of us. Now, if you're a classroom teacher, this is either a reminder of how to approach this for students or a grouping of kids, or, more importantly, how to act through the change, because all of these create very applicable opportunities for each of us to improve. The first thing we want to do is we really want to focus on the behavior of leadership in the change. How do we support the 3 behaviors, worry, frustration, and rapid adaptability? One of the first things that we do is that we normalize pivot points. What does that mean? Well, what that means is in meetings, we consistently talk about what-if scenarios with regularity. This makes the concept of shifting directions feel like a standard operating procedure rather than a crisis. So when we're talking about the different scenarios, it makes it safe for people to bring in a what-if scenario. What if this happens? What if this happens? Every one of those, if it comes from a place of good intent, is capturable, actionable, and we can do something with it in a proactive manner because we're going to forecast what's coming. The second thing we need to do is one of the best behaviors any leader can do, which is reinforce things and reward adaptability. Instead of only praising results, we need to publicly recognize everyone who handled sudden shifts in priorities with grace or creativity. Share how they did it. Make sure that we reward that through positive reinforcement and recognition. But most importantly, capture those things so that we can share with other people, hey, here's how other people have adapted, and creating just a bank of strategies that others can choose from. And then the last one here for leadership supporting the change is what's called the pre-mortem exercise. Before we even start a project, ask the team to imagine if it has failed 2 years in the future, and then work backward to identify the risks, what would happen. And this builds the muscle for foresight so that we are constantly looking down the road. You know, like if I didn't call that snow day and then we did have a blizzard, those consequences would have been significant. Now, the second thing we really want to focus on after we have positioned people to really forecast what's going to happen is communicate with honesty. The word transparency has been used so often that it's actually a trigger word that actually creates cloudiness for me and a lot of other people. Instead of using that word, focus on honest conversations that regularly and frequently focus on the why. Why is this happening? Vague updates breed anxiety. People get really nervous about that. Someday we could, maybe, it might. Those are horrible ways to communicate. Clarity, even when the news is incomplete, it builds trust. So focusing on the why and the how allow people to endure almost anything that's going to happen. Any how if they understand the why. Be relentless in communicating with people the purpose behind whatever the upcoming changes and never stop talking about it. The second thing is make sure that you're admitting the unknowns. Don't pretend to have all the answers. Don't say things like, we'll be fine, it'll be okay. Never say things like that. People can endure lots of stuff, but they cannot endure not knowing. So when you admit that you don't know the answer, just say, I don't know the answer to that yet, but I will update you as soon as I do. Making sure that you communicate in a very effective manner that even you don't have all of the answers. And then the last one is creating visual roadmaps. Creating a simple timeline showing people the phases of the transition, even a rough sketch, helps ground people in the sense of the progress so that they know where they stand. This is when, friends who've been to my trainings, you know this. I love to use the current state to desired state tool or the gap tool, one and the same for this one. Where are we currently at? Where are we going? And what are the steps to get there? Regularly communicating our progress and celebrating each step along the way, ideally with a sheet cake. Now, the other thing to recognize is that skill and will are very different things. Sometimes the 3 behaviors are driven by a belief that they don't know how to do something, can't do something, or won't be successful if they do something new. And we all get nervous, so we need to do some things. The first thing we need to do is remember that anxiety often stems from a feeling of inadequacy. And if people feel equipped, they feel empowered. And feeling empowered is powerful. So what we want to do is we want to create micro-learning paths. Don't wait for a week-long seminar to explain to everything all the things that are going on. Just start doing 10-minute sprints on new tools or methodologies relevant to whatever the future state is. Small things that we can ensure help people just step along the way. Sometimes those long, week-long seminars or day-long trainings or intense SOP meetings can lead to more anxiety or frustration because people aren't able to follow it. They have the will to do it, but sometimes just not the skills. Also, provide cross-training. Encourage job shadowing between departments. Allow kids to do different things between their classes to recognize and understand how within their own class they can make some adjustments if they watch how other people treat certain situations. The more someone understands the broader ecosystem of their world and sees other people in other conditions and learns from them, from their leadership, the less fear they have in the change and, well, they'll probably shift their mindset around it if they can see others finding success. And then the next one is focusing on psychological safety, using the tools that we talked about prior to this. Ensure people know that they are allowed to be bad at something new while they are learning it. Use the tool from a few weeks ago. But friends, the idea that we are expecting people to be great at something that's new to them is foolish. Finally, provide emotional support. People sometimes are worried, anxious, angry, overstimulated, dealing with lots of other stuff, and we need to find ways to meet them where they're at and support them, especially if they're great people that we want them to find success. People support what they help create. So if they have the opportunity to do that, they're going to find more ways to help it be successful. And when we provide choice and voice in the journey, well, we're unstoppable. So what are some of these tactics? The first thing to do is when we're trying to do something new, to allow co-creation sessions. Invite team members to design parts of the new workflow, the new ideas, the project, whatever it is. And the purpose is because it'll increase buy-in and ownership, especially if people have not just choice and voice, but if they get to have processes delegated to them. And the second thing, and this is one of my favorite pieces, just blankly put on your calendar office hours that are dedicated to open door time specifically for change-related venting or questions, so that you as the leader or someone as part of the process change can sit there and hear all of the different ways in which you are finding it easy, you are finding it frustrating, you are finding yourself in a sense of helplessness. I have a great colleague, Diana, who does this. She just virtually goes online, opens up a Zoom, and invites anybody to come in and pop in whenever they want to. And people from all over the state come into these meetings, ask simple questions, immediately find relief, and she empowers them. And she does something pretty awesome, which I'm encouraging you to do, because that's where I got this idea from her. Provide safety and an outlet for anxiety for people so that they can hear what they need to know, and you can hear what you need to understand. Finally, and most importantly, throughout the journey of change, constantly focus on positive reinforcement. What is going well? Who are the people who are thriving and surviving? And what are the behaviors that are helpful? Yet, also focus on modeling the behaviors as a leader, because remember, your influence is your leadership, and your team and the people around you will mirror your nervous system. If you're frantic, they will be too. If you're energetic and positive, well, they're more likely to be that way. Regulate your energy. If you're stressed, take a beat before addressing the team. A calm leader, a calm colleague is a stabilizing force. And then walk the talk. If the change involves new technology or a new schedule, be the first one to adopt it. Be there at the trainings. Make sure to monitor and measure all the different ways that people are learning and growing and finding frustration. And then share your own learning curve at the beginning to share with them, hey, here's what I experienced, and I think you're going to experience it too. That's called forecasting. That is acting like a meteorologist. It is the season for this to start happening in schools and systems around the world right now, especially here in the United States, where we are entering spring and closing out one school year to then begin planning and focusing on another. We have all different types of issues we are facing: budgeting, enrollment, reputational pieces, all kinds of things. But as the journey comes to an end of this year, it is the signal that another one is underway. It is the opportunity to see what's coming, to act like a meteorologist and support the changes that are coming by focusing on behaviors and tools and processes to help us all get across the line and stay safe. Buffalo leaders know these storms are coming. And while we can't predict what will happen, we can certainly prepare for them, opt into them, support others, and make simple changes in our systems to absorb the power of the forces of change. So let's do some smart thinking. Describe how you can apply forecasting tools and mindsets to support others. List the upcoming opportunities you have to support others navigating their storms. And describe a behavior you can grow to help you help others. That's it. That's the Smart Thinking Podcast. Hey, as always, thank you for listening, and please make sure to share this, comment on it, and rate it. I always appreciate getting feedback and comments and ideas, and also make sure to go to the CISA 6 website and look for the blog post that breaks down this entire episode. Also, in the comment section, you will find the registration for this summer's Smart Thinking Leadership Retreat held in Wisconsin. We have seats for 250 people. The retreat sells out very quickly, but if you're interested in attending, click on that link and it'll take you to all the details so that you can register now. But register quickly because we sell out fast. And as always, thank you to the Well Pennies for their great music and the opportunity to end each of these episodes with uplifting, whimsical music. Okay. As we close out, I want to remind you of a few things. You are going to find yourself either on the leading end of change or following end of change. And we are all leaders and followers. The follower has as much influence on the outcome as the leader. And too often we sit idle and we don't participate as the followers. That has to stop. Given the opportunity, we must address, confess, and find success. Poetry is free this episode. But you have to take that opportunity. Speaking the truth with a solution is critical for all of our success. You can be Marlin from Nemo sometimes, you can be the Lorax sometimes, and you can be the Roadrunner and haul through it all sometimes. But in the end, you make the choice. You influence others, and you will find a way. You opt in or out, and you choose to go to the storm or not. And if you're listening to this episode, I know why. You're looking for the opportunity to find ways not just to get people to face the storm and go to it. You're looking for the ways to ensure we all get through it. Predict, assess, support, fail, and go. Well, that's the formula for you, and you can do it.
Hey, put the world away. Fight a little longer until you feel okay. 'Cause there's nothing I can do when everything's the matter and there's no one left like you. Wait for the sunlight. Love or leave, what life would I lose? Ooh la la, ooh la 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 la. Don't you wanna feel it too? Heal your heart with rhythm and blues. Ooh la la, ooh la 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 la. Don't you wanna feel it too? Ooh la la, ooh la 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 la. Don't you wanna feel it too? Why do you delay your fickle eyes emotion? I know it feels that way, but hope's a honey in the air, a melody around you and no one else is there. Wait for the sunlight. Love or leave, what life would I lose? Ooh la la, ooh la 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 la. Don't you wanna feel it too? And heal your heart with rhythm and blues. Ooh la la, ooh la 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 la. Don't you wanna feel it too? Ooh la la, ooh la 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 la. Don't you wanna feel it too? So I've been learning as I go. There are 100 more I know, and I wanna close my eyes and wait for the sunlight. Love or leave, what life would I lose? Ooh la la, ooh la 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 la. Don't you wanna feel it too? And heal your heart with rhythm and blues. Ooh la la, ooh la 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 la. Don't you wanna feel it too? it too.